Hey there, and welcome to episode 6 of the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. I'm Ryan Burr with the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger, Nick, and Roger. Already now, springtime is here as we are into May, soon to be into June. The height of the junior golf season is upon us. I want to get your thoughts early on practice. It seems like, the junior golfer isn't really sure, or the parent isn't really sure, especially in the summer, what is an appropriate amount of practice per day. Not that there's actually a number that exists as far as how long your son or daughter should be practicing. But certainly you've seen kids accelerate all the way to the highest level. And certainly, Roger, we know fun is a big part of it, and they have to want to do it or it's just not going to work. But assuming that they're having fun, assuming that they do want to get out there and practice as school comes to a close, and most of the work for a lot of kids in this country gets done over the summer, what do you think is appropriate?
Yeah, Ryan, that's a great question because it's different for everyone, right? At the end of the day, everybody's got to know themselves and know where their strengths and weaknesses are. I think that is one thing that we talk a lot about our players, or with our players, is about what's appropriate for them, right? And a lot of times, the only way to know that is actually knowing what your skills are. So, as you know, and maybe the audience knows, but we have a player development assessment. We go through an assessment. We see where their skills are, where they're weak or where they're strong. And then we give them appropriate feedback relative to what they need to work on. So, and it's different for everyone. Obviously trying to play at the highest levels, it's going to take I would say very intentful practice, whatever that is, whether it's 2 hours, 1 hour, or 5 hours, it needs to be very productive in the sense of what you get out of it. So I know that's probably not the perfect answer, but it is the answer for the individual, right? At the end of the day, it is back to what's comfortable with you, but what do you know?
And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said the word intentful, Roger. I will be honest. I think the biggest misuse of time in junior golf is with kids that are quote unquote putting the hours in, but are actually not accomplishing anything. Intentful practice. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, we see too often kids going out there and hitting golf balls, right? So, or they go play, they come back and they look at some stats that they may or may not have taken, or maybe their parents have taken, and just said, oh, I got to go work on my driver. So they just sit there and bang driver for an hour or 20 minutes or whatever it may be, without really understanding what is the issue, right? Is it something maybe they just had a bad lunch and they went out and played poorly that day, or maybe they didn't get enough sleep. Are they actually looking at all the requirements to actually play, peak performance, if you will, right? So I think when you go out to a practice session, you need to have a good game plan. So, we talk a lot with our young athletes about, and our older athletes about going out there with intention to do something, to improve, right? Versus we're not going out there to punish you because you didn't have a good score, or punish you because you missed some shots. It's, hey, I want to improve, so I have an intention to actually improve. Let's call it, hey, my setup. I'm going to work on my setup on every single swing, versus I'm just going to rake another ball, hit it, and get frustrated.
It's interesting you bring that up, because golf, as we know, 99.999999% of the time is an individual sport, Roger. And it isn't for everyone, because there is a lot of alone practice if you want to play at the highest level. It just is a sport that does require time. It's interesting because if you play a team sport that has a coach, you show up to practice and that coach has nine times out of 10 actually a written down game plan, if you will, for that day, where every minute is accounted for. And after so many minutes, he's moving to the next thing or she's moving to the next thing. I rarely, if ever, see that in golf. And I'm not talking about when you're with your instructor, because clearly that instructor has a game plan. But let's be honest, for the most part, 9 out of 10 days, you're going to be by yourself or with a parent, or if you're lucky enough to belong to somewhere or play somewhere where there's other kids, that's obviously the best case scenario. But let's just assume for this podcast that you do spend a lot of time by yourself. And with the understanding that you don't, a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old most likely isn't going to write down a exact allotment of how their time is going to be used that day. So with that said, Roger, give us some ideas if, let's just take someone right in the middle and say we're talking about a 13, 14-year-old boy and girl that this summer is intending to practice as much as they can. Before they leave their house, Roger, what should they do?
That's a great question, Ryan. And I would say the first thing they should do is make sure that they have written down why they're going to practice, right?
Write it down.
Are they going to prepare for a tournament? Are they going to actually just go work on their game? Has their instructor given them something to say, hey, I need you to work on these things? So I think, again, back to my intention starts before I leave the house, right? So for a 13, 14-year-old, it's obviously, you need to be realistic about how much focus time you're going to have. We know at that age, it's probably about 20 minutes max. So keep things short and sweet, but be all in on every single rep, right? So we talk about this a lot. When a kid goes to the driving ranges, they like to set up their phone and they want to get on Instagram and they want to show people how hard they're working and those kind of things and make it look great and get followers. And that's not really helpful for the most part, but we know it's part of it. We know that, hey, that's okay. Let's have some fun with it too, with your friends, because that's their social time too, right? So at the end of the day, it's like going out there with one thing to work on. I'm going to go work on my putting, and my instructor told me that I need to, have more better ball contact, right? More centeredness of contact on my putter. Set up the right drill. So know what drills you're going to use when you get out there. So if it's a gate drill or it's just a tee drill where you're just banging the tee right in the middle of your putter, whatever it may be, just something that that I'm going to do those things with intention, with being all in on those reps.
All right, I want to hit on two things there. You said the word drill.
Yeah.
Very rarely, and obviously you and I are fortunate enough that we see a very large number of all different levels of junior golfers. And I could say very rarely do I see, without an instructor there, a player doing as you said, drill. Yeah. Instead, it is usually quickly to the driver and hitting balls and then maybe go play. How important is a drill set up by your instructor as far as making gains? Because, listen, we're talking today in May, moving into June, about how your son or daughter can make the most of this summer. So what the intent of this podcast is to help make the most of the summer. Is it realistic? And would you recommend that every practice would start with a actual drill, which isn't a full swing or isn't just trying to knock flags down?
Yeah, I'll kind of give you something that we do at the Golf Performance Center, Ryan, which is every kid starts out with a good physical warm-up. Let's make sure, first and foremost, golf is still a ballistic sport. It still needs the physical functionality, right? So let's kind of put that out there on the table, assuming everybody's going to do that, right? Start with. But then after that, really, it is actually saying, I'm going to set up the drills to give myself some feedback, because at the end of the day, when you don't have an instructor out there, the thing that drills do is give feedback for the player, right? So we want them to get good quality feedback based on the drills that they do. Now, with that being said, they need to then transition from drill to practice and then practice to play. So I think that's where a lot of things kind of start to, let's call it, break down for a player, especially a young player, is that just because you do a drill doesn't mean it's ready to put into play. So there is that transitional aspect of it, which is I do the drill, get my feedback, I go practice it without my drill tools, and then I go actually out and play. And then that feedback loop in those three areas is going to help me as a player. Is it ready to take out into a tournament, right? So the idea is that you're trying to get ready for, if it's an event, how do I know it's going to work? Well, those three areas of kind of the feedback loop is going to help you understand that.
All right, then the almighty question, which for every kid, it's how much do you practice putting green, chipping green, bunker, range, and how much do you play? At the end of the day, we all know the goal in golf is to get the ball in the hole in as few shots as possible. Every kid loves to play.
Yeah.
Where do you draw a balance? Is there a balance? Or are you okay with some players 15, 20 minutes on the range, and if they're going to go play as many holes as they can and they have that luxury, as long as they're being productive playing holes, that's okay too?
Yeah, and I think it really depends on the time of the year, right? I mean, I think if it's, let's call it out of season, I mean, there is a case to be made, if you will, to say, hey, you need to be spending about 80% of your time working on, maybe it's your mental game, the physical game, the technique, if you will, of whatever you're working on, whether it's putting, full swing, driver, it doesn't matter. But obviously now that we're in the season, it's that role that may be reversed, right? So the idea there is that we're going to reverse that and say, we need you preparing to play 80% of the time, which is more game-like situations, more time on the golf course, more hitting shots without thought of mechanics or things like that. So, but there's times during the season that you're preparing for a tournament that, yeah, you want to make a checkup. You want to make sure that things are moving well. Again, back to what I just said is, you might have a drill to give you a feeling or feedback, then practice, and then go play with that, right? So as a junior golfer, again, depending on where they are in their maturation as a player, I mean, early on, yeah, absolutely, go play as much as you possibly can. Hey, that transition into, a high school player that's serious about maybe playing competitive golf or college golf, there's probably going to be a little bit more balances and let's call it preparation to play their best. And then as you get into college and professional, it's the same thing, right? I want to be ready to play my best one time when the ball's in the air, if you will.
Well said, Roger. We now welcome in four-time winner on the PGA Tour, national champion at Stanford University, and owner of the Notah Begay III Junior Golf National Championship. We welcome in Notah Begay III. Notah, thanks so much for joining us here on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. I want to take it all the way back to you before winning a national championship, before winning the President's Cup, before winning on the PGA Tour, and now playing on the PGA Tour Champions. For all of our listeners and viewers out there, how did it start for you? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing as a youngster and how you found the game of golf.
Well, thanks, Ryan, and great to be on the show with everybody. I'm such a big believer in everything that's going on. Roger Nick spearheading a tremendous effort focused on advancing the interests of junior golfers across the world, in particular here in the United States. For me, and this is why I'm so interested in working with Roger and the rest of the team at the Junior Hub, is that I had a very sort of uncharacteristic progression toward college golf. I kind of got lucky in a lot of senses. I ran into some knowledgeable people that was just kind of by pure chance. But the way I got access to the game, which I think is paramount to sort of opening up the game now, was just by asking for a job at a local municipal golf course in Albuquerque on the west side of town. And a guy named Don Zamora gave me a job. I would park carts, pick up range baskets, clean bathrooms in exchange for practice privileges starting when I was 9 years old. And that got my foot in the door. That gave me a chance to go out and work on my game. I started playing tournaments pretty seriously, sort of on a state and regional level around the age of 10 or 11, and then kind of moving to the national level at the age of about 13 or 14. And, that's a very familiar story to a lot of players across the country. But for me, that was really the starting point, was getting that access into the game, the access to practice facilities, access to an 18-hole or just a golf course that I can go out and kind of learn how to shoot scores some. And I was very fortunate for that, and it developed into some really good things for me. And now I'm on the back end of my career, playing on the PGA Tour Champions, trying to figure it all out again. It seems like same problems, but just a different part of my life.
Yeah, Notah, well, welcome. And again, it's always great to have you and talk with you about golf and everything else you got going on in life. So One of the things I wanted to ask you about from a junior golfer perspective, Ryan just asked me about, players and what they do, how they break down their time. And it sounds like you spend a lot of your time playing golf and learning how to play and learning how to get the ball in the hole. Is that something, was that a time, was that early on, and then did you transition? Did you have a coach? So tell us a little bit about that transition.
Well, I think Roger, I really think it's a balance, and it varies from player to player. And I look at, a couple of players that many of the junior golfers have sort of no current memory of, like a Ben Crenshaw versus a Tom Kite. They were both taught by Harvey Pinnock, but which was one of the greatest teachers of all time. And Harvey would let Tom Kite hit a lot of range balls, play a little bit from time to time, and he encouraged Ben to just play. They had two different mindsets. They had sort of two different approaches to the game, and they had two different ways of going about achieving success. And I think it's just finding a nice balance for, number one, what's available to you. Are you in close proximity to a range or a golf course where you can have access to play? I mean, for instance, if your parents are members of a course, or you have maybe a city golf membership, playing the game becomes a little bit easier as opposed to hitting a lot of range balls. But it's just finding the balance for the player in terms of making sure that they're addressing all of the technical needs of their game that you would sort of work on in a range or a simulator, and then learning how to play the game. One of the biggest issues I see when I cover college golf, with the NCAA is kind of on the horizon now this year, is that a lot of the young, even the best collegians, don't know how to back down and hit a finesse shot, to hit a three-quarter shot and control the trajectory and the spin rate on the ball, which is particularly helpful in windy conditions. We've become so enamored with power that a lot of collegiate golfers want to solve every problem with more power, and sometimes that's not the best solution. And the only way you learn that is by getting out and playing and hitting a variety of shots in windy conditions.
Yeah, that's well said. I think one of the things, Notah, with that being said, and we hear it all the time, and actually we had a guest on talking about how important speed was for junior golfers and how it is and for their team. Obviously, we know that, but I think you made a great point there, which is learning how to control that speed and being able to use it to your advantage is one thing, but not having control over your golf ball is a completely another thing, which I think one of the things that, you've done with us actually going through the assessment side is learning, understanding how your ability to control the golf ball is so important. Would you agree that's something that for junior golfers, they need to understand as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes from finding somebody sort of on your team or that you have access to, a professional with some experience on playing it. It doesn't have to be at the PGA Tour level. There's a lot of really qualified and thoughtful teachers out there that may not have played the PGA Tour, but still sort of understand kind of the nuance of the professional game. And I think the sooner young players hit more shots and learn how to hit more shots after they've established sound fundamentals, that's the quickest way to sort of learn how to play tournament golf, because tournament golf is comprised of being able to hit a variety of different shots and under pressure conditions. And, that's a whole nother element of the game that sort of takes some mental preparation and some experience that I think, everything at the Junior Golf Hub is directed to address all these disciplines of the game. And if you don't sort of categorize them into disciplines as a junior golfer and organize your approach to progress, the tail's going to wag the dog. I mean, it's really becomes almost an exercise in futility for a lot of young golfers, because they end up going in circles. They feel like they're going forward, but they're not really making progress. And what everything at the Hub is designed to do is to give you some quantitative, measurable numbers so that you can assess progress.
Let's get into that a little bit, Notah. J.C. Deacon, the head coach of Florida, episode 4 here on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. That episode did very, very well. And listen, he's one coach that's been very successful, that just won the SEC, but he said he recruits strictly on speed. Regardless of what your score is, if you don't have speed, then you're probably not the perfect fit for him and Florida, meaning that is the one requirement you have to be recruited at UF and be a Gator, is you have to have speed or show the ability to have speed once he gets a hold of you. Certainly, Notah, you've been a huge proponent of PDI, which is an indicator and certainly can help in that direction. Tell us a little bit about PDI, how you came to it, and how you utilize it now as you are once again playing at the professional level.
Well, I honestly think, and I'm speaking from firsthand experience here, Ryan, because I've gone through PDI multiple times, and I've watched players on the men's and the women's side at Stanford, at Texas, and University of Mexico all go through PDI and be able to establish some benchmark numbers around, measurable elements of the game. I think that it is probably, in my opinion, one of the most constructive things a young junior golfer could implement into their routine in the last 30 years. Simply because what Roger and the Hub team have done is they've broken the game down into what I talked about, into the major disciplines of performance. And they've been able to assign sort of measurable values. So, for instance, if the three of us were to go out and run a mile, we could establish some benchmark numbers based upon a stopwatch. So we all go out there, and Ryan, I run a 5-minute mile and you run like a 9-minute mile. I know I'm 4 minutes faster than you, right? And you have an understanding of saying, hey, if I want to beat Notah in the mile, I've got to cut some time off my pace here. And that's really all it is we're looking for something that is consistent. Right now, it's left to the devices of a teacher, a parent, or even what a young junior golfer can find on the internet. And granted, if you find the right stuff on the internet, it's wonderful. And it can really improve. I've learned some stuff through things I've seen on social, but I've also seen things that just make absolutely zero sense, and instructors that really sort of don't have a pedigree to be talking about certain things. And so what the Hub's done for junior golfers is they've consolidated, they've filtered, they've packaged, and they're allowing junior golfers who do get into the system to make systemic progress, measured progress toward their goals, and be able to understand how they got there, because that's the key. If you start cutting shots off your game, it really gives you an understanding, okay, how do I stay here? And then what's the next level for me? And that's what the Hub has done for me. I mean, obviously I'm the opposite of a junior golfer, but all of these different, measurement, tools, I'll call them, have been critical to my improvement here on the Champions Tour.
Roger, I want to ask you, certainly, each week we're having a lot of people reach out to us about this podcast, and as they learn about the Hub and everything it has to offer, it seems like is today really this podcast, this episode is strictly about getting your son or daughter ready to hit the ground running when school ends and summer hits. And if they're really trying to make improvements over June, July, and August before they go back to school, give us an idea of how our viewers and listeners can utilize the Junior Golf Hub.
Yeah, absolutely. Log on to Junior Golf Hub, use our Hub of Junior Golf podcast code, and check out the Player Development tab, and you'll be able to find and learn more about the Player Development Index and the Player Development System that we have in place. So they can check it out right there.
And that is a great tool to see where you are before summer starts, right, Roger?
Yeah, that's right.
and then utilize that. And then very similar to if you're taking algebra class, you take a test, or you know what you know at the beginning of the year, and then you see what you know at the end of the year. And can't our kids use this to see where their starting point is, and then see, as they really grind over the summer with PDI, where they finish?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the idea, right? So you want to know where your skill sets are, whether it's in putting, chipping, full swing, ball control, right? So those are what we call lead factors to understanding how to actually, score and play the game, right? So obviously you've got to have the skill sets to play the game and play the shots, but knowing that you can do that, going out there with the confidence and saying, wow, I actually can move the golf ball in different directions and, change trajectories, and find those hard to find, located hole locations, if you will, right? So that's so important for a young player to be able to do that as often as they possibly can. I'll actually go back and ask Notah. I think one of the really cool things about this, if you do this correctly with the right intention, Ryan, we talked about that a little bit earlier, is that you will feel a little bit of that pressure, because this is not like, hey, let me rake a ball over and hit as many of these shots as possible. Notah, when you went through this, and I think you gave us some feedback, and we had several players at Stanford and Texas and East Carolina say the same thing, which was, how did you feel about, hey, I only have this one shot to hit this shot? What were some of the emotions or feelings that you had there?
That's a great question. One of the things that I've always worked on, and I think that players that sort of have a clear understanding of tournament golf, right? There's a difference. There's, recreational golf. There's golf at your club or within sort of a familiar, high school golf and familiar environment. And then there's just elite level tournament golf. And you start getting into sort of the upper ranks of these competitive environments, and the pressure escalates, the courses get tougher. Everything across the board is just a bit more challenging. And I think that whenever you're able to elevate the intensity of your practice, and this doesn't just come from me, it's something I've learned and I've talked to with Tiger over the years, especially lately. He's been great about giving me feedback in terms of me being on the Champions Tour. Because there's a lot of things I forgot. I hadn't really played competitive golf in over 10 years. And now I'm relearning how to sharpen up my skills. So to a certain degree, I'm in the same boat as a lot of these young junior golfers who are just sort of trying to find their way and establish some consistency in their game. There's not really a whole lot in my game, but what Tiger and I talked about, even just as recently as last week, was increase the intensity of your practice. Make each ball count. It's not just a going through the motions and hitting the next 7-iron. It's, okay, I'm trying to hit this at a specific target with a specific swing key in mind, trying to execute a certain outcome, and then being able to focus on the process and the execution and not so much the outcome. And it's really keyed me into a variety of different things, because at my age, I can't go out and I can't hit 500 balls a day. Mm-hmm. So I've got to make my sessions a little bit more efficient so that they're effective for me, and understanding the needs. Understanding the exact needs of my game based upon the PDI process, I'm able to go directly to those areas and focus on the problem. In a lot of cases in golf, people are trying to fix their backswing when that's not really the issue. It's their setup. And so the quicker you can get to understanding the source of certain mechanical challenges, the faster you're going to improve. And that's really what I've enjoyed about, these different points at which I've worked with the whole PDI system.
Last thing, Notah, and we'll get you out of here. I know you got a big week coming up on the PGA Tour Champions, but the Notah Begay III Junior Golf National Championship, pretty remarkable where this started in the middle of the pandemic in 2020 and where it will be now, heading to an all-boys, all-girls final on national TV this November. Give us an idea of where you're at, what your vision is, and how you see the Notah Begay III Junior Golf National Championship with all of its local events, regional events, and of course the national championship. How has it evolved, and where do you see it going, and what impact does it have on junior golf?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much we've talked about it with this team, but I'm very proud of our newly formed partnership with the PGA of America in their support in an official capacity of the Junior Golf National Championship, and in support of that relationship, granting us 2 players, the lowest shooting female golfer, and then on the guy side, the winner of that age group as well, will both go now to the PGA National Junior Championship, which is a huge, huge step forward for us, because the origin of our tour, Ryan, that we began with the vision in partnership with Roger and everybody else on the team, was to provide accessible opportunities for anybody interested in competitive golf. So anybody that wants to cross that threshold from being a recreational golfer or just playing at your club, but actually wants to go and play in a competitive environment, but may not have the experience, may not maybe be shooting the best scores in their age group. We don't turn anybody down. We've got kids at the local stages shooting scores in the 90s and the low hundreds. And, we welcome that, not because they're the best scores, but because we've got more golfers in the platform. And so what we want to see now is then through partnerships like we have with the Junior Golf Hub, with Golf Tech, with Wilson, we're able to help them make progression through the ranks of the junior golf system at their own pace and with their own interest level. And I think that's why we see maybe a different subset of the junior golf community playing in our events, because number one, our prices are the lowest in the market for points ranked events at quality venues, good organization, and we really care about the people we're serving, but also because we have so many of them. And we're trying to just create this point where junior golfers on the fence about whether they're going to play another sport or stay in golf. We want them to stay in the game. There's more opportunities available in golf than just being a professional golfer on the LPGA or the PGA Tour. And we want to make sure that they understand that, and if it's something that interests them, that they stay in the game with us.
And then just add to that, of course, the fact that with the finals being on Golf Channel, of the kids that are college age eligible, 99% of the players that have played in the national championship have received a scholarship to go play college golf. Pretty remarkable if the end game is for your son or daughter to ultimately play college golf. I'm not sure any organization provides a telltale, if you make it to the championship, 99% chance, I'll take those odds that you're going to end up playing college golf. So it has brought visibility with all the college coaches, male and female, Division 1, 2, and 3, NAIA in America. So certainly know that it's working. Everything you've touched is working, and certainly from your story of as a 9-year-old asking to pick up golf balls to give you a start to where you are now. It's a pretty amazing journey that you've been on, and we thank you for coming on the podcast today. One last thing, Ryan, on that point, is that, we've had kids and I've learned so much, from Roger, the Junior Golf Hub, and just sort of their complete understanding of the landscape of junior and collegiate golf, that there's so many more playing opportunities. Now, everybody wants to and has goals of playing at a Power 5 program, the Stanfords and the Texases and the Oklahoma States and Floridas. But, that's sometimes just not a reality for a lot of golfers with their skill level. But, there's thousands of collegiate programs available for these kids, which is why, we're able to send so many kids on to that next level to play at a variety, whether it's a junior college level, a Division 2, maybe a middle, a mid-major Division 1 program, because what I really love is basically every single year, Ryan, we have a story of someone that nobody knew about,
in the junior golf system. They come, they play well on national television on the Golf Channel, and they end up with a better opportunity or a new opportunity from a college program. And we've seen that across the board. We've sent kids to major Power 5 program, but we've also sent so many other kids to play collegiate golf that may not have had that opportunity. And that's something that I think we should all be proud of.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. Notah, congrats on everything.
Best of luck this week, my friend. We'll be in touch.
Have a good week.
All right, thanks.
Roger, a lot to unpack there for sure. I'll go all the way back to the beginning here of episode 6 when we talked about practice this summer. And at the end of the day, it had to, be fun. But if you were dragging your player kicking and screaming to practice, you may want to rethink things. Here you have a 9-year-old by himself that knocks on the door of a pro shop and asks if he can clean toilets and pick up balls in return, not for money, but being able to practice on his own. That's a 9-year-old. And obviously that is the rarest of 9-year-olds, but that is the 9-year-old that went to win 4 times in the PGA Tour, win a President's Cup, and win a national championship. So if there's one, there are more than others out there, but that's what we're all competing against, right? It's that kind of want and desire, no matter what walk of life we're in. Yeah. There's someone that we're competing with in whatever we choose to do that wants it that bad. And that gives you an idea of how difficult, no matter what the industry it is to be the absolute top level.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, it's kind of why we're seeing ourselves get a little taken back by how many kids are coming from other countries and playing at the collegiate level in the U.S. And, they're just wanting it more than a lot of the U.S. kids, for that very reason. And they're saying, hey, I want that opportunity, where we've got kids that go, I only want the best opportunity, right? So they're only willing to do what it takes to do that. But it's, we say it all the time, is good enough, right? And it is indeed not good enough, right? So as you said, in life, whether it's sport, life, work, it doesn't matter, school, good isn't good enough for most of these opportunities that are out there in front of us, right? So there's too many people now in the world competing for those positions, if you will, in life, that we need to wake up and make sure that you want this, have that desire to want to go out there and get better at all of it, right? And we talk about it with our 5 elements. You got to have the best, you got to have the desire to want to get better, right? At the end of the day, you got to have good coaching, good mentoring to say, hey, I'm not going to do the work for you, and it's not going to be easy. You got to be physically able to do the work, stay in it, function well, have the great mindset, which is, hey, I'm passionate. I know failure is part of this, and I've got to have the right equipment. And, again, Ryan, I'm going to say something that, what you and Notah have been doing with the NB3 National Championship and exposing some of these kids and creating accessible opportunities just is amazing. And I don't think enough people appreciate that. And I just want to say, first and foremost, I appreciate it tremendously, being partners with you guys and being involved and seeing where the landscape is going with junior golf. So really, really proud to be a part of this. And so hopefully we can make some bigger differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And to put a bow on this episode, as you start to think about summer for your son or daughter, as you start to think about tournaments, as you start to think about practice, as you start to think about coaching, as you start to think about the fitness end, it can be overwhelming. We know it can be overwhelming. I've been in that position, sitting on the computer, trying to figure out what tournaments are right, what are the right tournaments, who's the right coach, what's the right practice time, how to handle the heat, how to keep it fun. And folks, at the end of the day, we understand that, especially if this is your first go through, and for many parents, you only get 1 or maybe 2 where your children are want to be junior golfers. The Junior Golf Hub will answer so many of your questions. And as we talked about, I think knowing where you're at the start of the summer and knowing where you finish is a gigantic advantage. It's not necessarily all about score. their wind conditions, their bad breaks. There's a lot of things that are variables that you really can't control necessarily. Where you only play 4 tournaments a summer, and on one of them you had bad allergies. I mean, there's things that come into play. But if you use the Junior Golf Hub to your advantage and really document where you're at and then where you finish the summer, I think your son or daughter and you will have a better understanding of how that hard work paid off. So one more time, Roger, because I know each week at the JG&C office, they're getting a lot of questions and requests how to use the hub. Give it to us one more time.
You got it. JuniorGolfHub.com. Use JuniorGolfPod code. Get your free access. Check out those tournaments. Learn more about the Essentials Guide there, and Player Development and Player Development Index.
Awesome. This one ran a little long, but I think we got a lot accomplished, especially as we start to talk about practice. I can tell you we've got an unbelievable lineup coming to the podcast this summer, Roger. I've talked with a few people that actually contacted me because they've been listening to it and they want to know if they can get on. So we're just scratching the surface. Make sure each and every week you download the podcast, listen to it on your way to work, have your son or daughter listen to it. We think the information we're putting out here can be of value. So for Roger Nick, the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, I'm Ryan Burr. This has been the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast, episode 6.